Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I am Bill, the company's expert. Wow, my camera is bright. I'm going to see if I can adjust that. This is the weekly live stream where we talk about hiring, careers, job interviews, resumes, job search, job discovery, all that kind of stuff. And it's an interactive live stream, so if you're seeing my face, you should see a chat box somewhere nearby. Get in the chat. Let me know what you're struggling with, what you're wondering about, and I will do my best to help you out. The title of today's episode is Tell Me About Yourself, Best Answer, and Fake Jobs. This is episode 106. And as always, just a shout out to my YouTube channel members, my Patreons, my Super Thanks donors, and to you guys, my participants. You guys are awesome. Thank you for being here. We are going to answer those questions in reverse order. We're first going to talk about fake jobs, and then we're going to talk about the best answer to the job interview question, tell me about yourself. And then we're going to be taking questions. Maybe to start off, I will just get into the chat because I see there's some people chiming in with some stuff here. Amazed is here. Hello to Amazed. Amazed says, greetings. So do interviewers steal candidates' problem-solving ideas? I've been in interviews where the manager keenly took notes of my solution ideas without any subsequent job offers. Yeah, that does happen. Usually not, but listen, everything happens some of the time, and there are a lot of unscrupulous people out there. If you are giving away like pearls of wisdom or something in the job interview, or they're giving you aptitude tests and this kind of thing, then there's a higher chance of that, obviously. The big thing you got to watch out for that I've talked about before is when they give you an assignment, right? They bring you down for a job interview and then they get you to do some kind of assignment, right? And sometimes it can be a thing where they give it to you and then you take it home with you after the interview and you're supposed to do some work and then submit it to them. Okay, now that can be a red flag depending on how they do it, because you see, in most countries in the world, you have labor laws, right? Employment standards. And what it says is that you can't get someone to work for you for less than the minimum wage, right? Like you have to pay them for them to work for you. So a well-known scam is for if a company, say, needs some consulting done, they need a little bit of work done on a project. What some unscrupulous companies have done is they've posted a job, like a fake job, and they bring the candidates down, they get the candidate to do some kind of project for them, submit it, like saying, what would you do for this situation? Here's our situation, you can see our setup, how would you recommend we resolve it? And then you write it all up in a project format, a report, and then you send it to them. And then what they do is they ghost you, so you don't hear from them again. They take your work, they use it, and they've essentially gotten you to consult for them for free, right? Now, that's against the law because you're technically working for them. You're submitting work to them like you would in a job, but they're not paying you for it, right? So that's a well-known scam. So they can give you aptitude tests and things like that, but they have to be tests. They can't be things that, they could then take your test and then use it for something productive in their business, okay? So that's where that line is drawn. Hello to Alex Tron. That's an interesting handle. Says, yo, right on. Is that, you could do like, I'm imagining you doing a gesture like, yo, what is up kind of thing, Botifar says, hi, Bill. Hi, Botifar. I hate this question, Bill. Yeah, you're not the only one, Botifar. Botifar says, I always get stressed. Listen, Botifar, the good news is that this is actually a pretty simple question to answer. Okay, there's a very simple way to answer it. We're going to get into it today. Tech Programmer is here. Hello to Tech Programmer. Alex Tron says, I hate the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Like, hopefully I win the lottery, dude. I don't have to work here. Yeah, that's another classic example of a question where what they're asking you is not literally what they're asking you. Okay, they're not asking you to predict where you're going to be. What they're trying to determine with that question is this the kind of job / work you're excited about doing? Or if in 5 years you imagine yourself doing something completely different, you're promoted up, you're doing a different thing, in which case that would be a red flag. That's what they're probing for. The best answer to that is, the short version is to say, right here, doing this. This is what I love to do. This is what I like. This is what I want to do. And then they think, right on, we got someone who's probably going to be a good fit. Flank Sinatra is here. No relation. There's a little bit of dust on my monitor. I thought that was a little Sedilla accent on it. This is like the Mexican Frank Sinatra, who hangs out here. That's great. Tech Programmer says, if an interviewer only asks 2-3 questions and proceeds to talk about the company, is that a good sign? Listen, it takes all kinds. If they ask you a couple of questions and they talk a little bit about themselves, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It could be a bad thing if the person is like a raging egomaniac or something, but I don't think that in itself is the end of the world. Look, you have no control over these people. Just do your best, and if they call you back, they call you back. After the interview, don't sweat it. Keep moving forward. Keep trying to pursue other opportunities. Flank Sinatra says, the problem is getting to the interview. Most companies use an AI filter application. Yes, but look, we got to start somewhere, okay? So today we're talking about this job interview question in the interview. I've talked about all that stuff many times before, but we're going to try and confine this down here. Bottom line is customize your resume, right? That's why AI tools like ChatGPT and stuff are really, really useful, because when they say we're looking for this, and then you send in a resume that says, hey, I got this, it's kind of hard to reject you, and you're using all the same lingo that they used. So you're a perfect keyword match and key phrase match for the stuff they're looking for. It's kind of hard for them to filter you out. Okay, so that's your hint about what to do. Amaze says, tell me about yourself is not quite a bad question, though somewhat dreadful. I like that question only when I answer it effectively. I like that question too when I answer effectively. Yeah, listen, tell me about yourself, for whatever the hell retarded reason, is the most searched for question by job seekers. They want to know the answer to this more than anything else. I don't understand it. That's just the deal. So I'm going to answer it today because a lot of people are interested. It's not the toughest question by far. It's actually a relatively simple question. So listen, let's get into this. Let's start off. We're going to be talking about fake jobs, and then we'll get to the answer to tell me about yourself. So you guys might have noticed this. Fake jobs, right? It's a thing. It's a concern for a lot of people. If you don't know what this is where you see job postings online. And it turns out that even though they say they're looking to hire someone, they're not. Okay? So you, seeing this, apply for the job like a chump, do all this work, right? And what they do is they're not even interested in hiring you or anyone else. So they get your job application, right? Now, this has been a complaint. Why are there so many jobs out there that are fake? I've heard the number 30% thrown around, as in 30% of all the job postings you see are fake. I don't know if that's an accurate number. It makes sense to me, because if it was less than that, it wouldn't be much of a thing. But it's enough of a thing that people are talking about this, right? But it's not like it's 80% of the jobs or anything. It's just like 30, it's something like that. Okay, this is obviously a concern. So why are there so many fake jobs? What's going on the other end? Well, a lot of it is companies being lazy or recruiters being incompetent, and they're leaving the job postings up even after they've filled them. So that's one reason, okay? Another reason, and I don't think this is the main reason, but this is something that we do see, is companies intentionally doing this, okay? You like the little crack in my voice? I'm coming down with a fever. So if my voice goes falsetto all of a sudden, you'll know why. It's weird things happening in my throat. The other kind of weird, unscrupulous thing is that companies are intentionally doing this And it's part of this nefarious kind of thing they're doing. A little bit is industrial espionage, and a little bit is data harvesting. Or if you're in the UK, data harvesting, right? So what they're doing is they're trying to see who's out there in the labor market, okay? If they post a job and the only people that apply are really unqualified, and not very many of them, that tells them something. If they post a job and immediately you get 250 fully qualified candidates that apply for it, that are desperate for a job, that tells them something else, right? And that gives them information they can do a whole bunch of things with. They can keep technically they can keep resumes on file, so if somebody quits, instantly they've got a pool of candidates they can bring in for interviews. I've heard that. I don't know how often that occurs. Another thing they do is, they're looking at data, right? They're looking at, who's out there, and they're just doing studies on the labor market. That's something else. They use that information when they're figuring out what their compensation is going to be for different jobs, how much competition there is for them. If there's a lot of competition, then they won't offer as much money. If there's very little competition, then they might offer more money. So things like this, there's all kind of like that stuff going on. And finally, the other big one, the big reason is that companies, you see, a company is designed to make money. And one of the ways it tries to do that is by looking good to its owners and other potential owners. Okay. So, those would be some of the stakeholders. So, and also the public. And the public doesn't really care too much about job postings, but it is a thing. If ever you've read like a business article about a company, one of the things that journalists or people that write articles will look at is they'll do a search for the company. And if they see the company posting a lot of jobs, that gives you insight into what the company's doing. If they're ramping up a new department or they're starting up a new operation, they're going to be hiring people for that operation. So even if the company won't talk to you publicly and make statements about what they're doing, you can get sort of signals of what they're doing by looking at who they're trying to hire, right? Like if a company says, no, we're not working on any AI initiatives, but yet they've posted 100 jobs for people with skills in AI, you can kind of get a signal of what they're actually working on, right? So they're using job postings as signals for various reasons. And so they'll post jobs sometimes that are fake jobs to send a signal that, we're prospering, we're making record profits, we're expanding, things like this. So sometimes job seekers get on the wrong end of that, where you become the victim because this is a fake job, but you get caught up in it and you apply to it and do all this work, hoping that they'll hire you, and it's just not a real job. So those are some of the reasons why this is happening. Okay. I wanted to touch briefly on how to spot a fake job for those of you who don't know. There's some red flags that are well known that, if you see these, that could indicate it's a fake job. So don't go to great lengths to apply to it or expend a lot of time and energy on it. Things like the job is just too good to be true. It's very vague. It doesn't give you a lot of details. The title is not very specific, or it's to be determined, this kind of stuff. And then anything that has like the markers of a scam, like they need you to pay up front or there's fees involved, things like this. Or they're just like a lot of scams, it's just written very unprofessionally. They're making all kinds of spelling and grammar mistakes. If this is supposed to be coming from a Fortune 500 company, but yet they can't string a sentence together, that's probably a fake job. Okay. What can you do about fake jobs? Like how to respond to this if you want to try and get some insight into what's going on. The conventional wisdom is if you see this job through an aggregator like Indeed is an aggregator. That means that it crawls the web looking for jobs in other places, finds them, and then lists them all on its site, right? So it's not posting the job. It's just finding a listing for you of a company that is posting a job. That's an aggregator. there's a whole bunch of these. There used to be Monster, Jobzilla. There's like a whole bunch where they list other companies' jobs, right? So if you're finding the job on an aggregator, the conventional wisdom is to go to the company's website and get it directly from the source. So if Indeed lists a job from, I don't know, Toyota, saying we're hiring a person to work at Toyota, go to the Toyota site, find the job on their own website, and then apply for it there. Don't apply to it through Indeed. That's the conventional wisdom, because somebody could have planted that job on Indeed that says it's from Toyota, but it's not. Okay? If they ask you for like really personal or confidential information, like, you know, in the United States, is it social security number you guys have? Like, some countries you have social insurance number. In the States, I think you have social security number. You know, credit card numbers. You know, like things like this. If they require like really fishy stuff, the answer is no. They shouldn't need any of that. Anything beyond like maybe your address, your physical address, is probably the most personal information I think that they could ask. You know, maybe a phone number, maybe, but like that's the limit of what they would need. Anything beyond that is a red flag. Okay, so that's the stuff you can do. That's a good overview of it. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's go over to you guys in the chat here. Where did I leave off? Let's see here. Titus says, your earlier YouTube video on Tell Me About Yourself made me nail the interview. Your efforts don't go unappreciated. Well, thank you, Titus. That's very gracious of you to come back and tell me this. And I'm glad that it's working out for you. EF says, why am I offered jobs online for jobs an hour away despite I asked for a job in my town? I don't know. What did you do? What did you do to orchestrate this conundrum, EF, where you get offered a job? It's like the line from The Simpsons. Can a man just walk down? What's wrong with this country? Can a man just walk down the street without being offered a job? I'm not sure. I'm not sure why that would be. Mr. Zoli says they must advertise certain positions to comply with the law. Certain positions cannot be filled without advertising the vacancy. Not as much as you'd think, Mr. Zoli. That's what we'd like to believe. Listen, the only time when a company is going to be required to advertise a job is basically for two reasons. Number one, if they're the government, so it's a government job. Government works a little bit different from like the private sector. So they're in their own little bubble. They make certain things more transparent. They have to do things publicly. Yes. Most jobs are not in the government. The only exception to that would be a company, usually very, very large enterprise, that would have been subsidized in some way by the government. Okay, so they received like a massive payment from the government for whatever reason to, like, you know, contribute to some initiative. And in return, they're required to post certain things, you know, like that kind of stuff. Right? Because maybe some of the money that's being used to pay those people originally came from the government. It's a government subsidy. That's the only time they're required to do anything with this stuff. Okay? Companies can do what they want. You know how you can work anywhere you want and you can quit any job you want? You have the freedom to do this. They have the right to hire who they want. You know what I'm saying? Despite a lot of like things that are coming in, the only thing that they have to comply with are employment standards. So when you pay someone, you know, and you don't drive them like a slave, you know, like there's employment standards, labor laws. And then the only other thing they're required to conform to are human rights laws. Right. And then that can sometimes include safety acts like workplace health and safety, or environmental type stuff, which ties in with the health aspect of workplace health and safety. But those are the only requirements. They can post whatever the hell they want. They don't have to post this or have to post that unless they're taking government money. And most employers are not, you know. So obviously that varies around the world, but that's the general rule. So don't be fooled that they have to do this and they have to do that. A lot of that is a fabrication. EF says, yes, I'm finding the job on Indeed. Are you the voice? You are the voice of... Oh, thank you. If you're talking to me, thank you. Flank Sinatra says, this is so helpful. Thank you. Well, good. I'm glad. Okay, Christine Sock says, greetings from CT. Is that Connecticut? I don't do well with acronyms. I'm talking to people all over the world, so that Connecticut, like the Hamptons kind of thing. Decided to watch some of your videos to refresh my interviewing skills and found you are doing a live session. Feeling a little nervous for interviews after your... Listen, it's perfectly normal to feel nervous about anything you haven't done for a while, right? Especially job interviews where you're on somebody else's turf, you're talking to strangers, they're potentially grilling you, and there's a lot at stake. There's your future employment, is at stake. So it's completely understandable. The good news is that this stuff really isn't that hard. Once you learn like what they're looking for and how they're trying to evaluate you, it really isn't that hard if you do two things. If you do one, research on your own where you like look up the answers to a lot of standard common job interview questions and practice memorizing the answer and then saying the answer, retaining it. And then phase two is get some other person. I was going to insert a less complimentary term there. Get some other poor dumb bastard that you have, lying around, around your home or whatever, some person loafing around that's not doing anything with their lives. Get them to help you. Get them to do a pretend interview with you, mock interview. And that's where they pretend to be the job interviewer, and they're going to interview you. This is going to be like a rehearsal, okay? And you could do it a whole bunch of different ways. You could get them to make up the questions, or you could give them a list of questions, and then you're going to like sort of enact like a job interview. And if this feels weird and it feels kind of hokey and a bit strange, that's good, because that's simulating the conditions that you're probably going to be feeling in a real job interview. You're going to be a little bit outside your comfort zone, a little bit nervous, and then you have to perform under those conditions, right? So do a bunch of those. Get different people if you can. Do it a whole bunch of times. And pretty soon, you're going to surprise yourself at how well you do, okay? Because it's the same questions for the most part over and over again. And once you understand, it's not like trying to memorize the answer to a million questions. You need to understand what they're looking for. And what they're looking for never really changes. So as long as you speak to that, and then a few basic things like, you're friendly and approachable and you've got somewhat of a smile on your face, that's all you got to do. And then beyond that, it's totally a matter of random chance. It totally depends on what they happen to be looking for, and it's just like rolling the dice. So the key is to do a bunch of interviews, and you're going to pretty much give the same interview each time, more or less. One company will look at you and go, no, absolutely not. Another company will look at you and go, wow, you're amazing. We need you. We pick you. You've given pretty much the same performance. The rest is up to what they happen to be looking for. What situation you just happen to walk into. Okay? That's how these things go. So don't feel too bad about it. Just do your best. Do your work. Do your research. And within a couple of weeks of working at this, you'll feel a whole lot more confident. You're welcome, Mr. Zoli. Amaze says the hiring system is largely flawed nowadays. Be great. Listen, you know what? It was always flawed. Like it's never been. There was never a golden age of, hiring. They had really smart people that knew exactly how to spot talent, and and they were professional and they were decent. Like there were some things that worked a little bit better in the past. I think people were more polite in the past and a little bit more professional, but there was never a golden age. It's always been like this, one way or another. Yeah, don't worry, Amazed. It looks very pessimistic until all of a sudden they hire you and it doesn't. You know what I mean? So don't worry, okay? You're going to be fine. Let's go to the main topic of this live stream, which is the best answer to the job interview question. Tell me about yourself. Okay, I'm going to pull up my highly organized notes here that I made for myself. They've never let me down before, and I suspect they never will. So I got a good feeling about this. Okay. So, let me start at the beginning here. I've heard some people say you start answering this question, tell me about yourself, by thanking them. Thank you for bringing me here for this interview. It's a tremendous opportunity, blah, 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 blah. No, you should have done that as part of your greeting when you walked in the room. Okay, that's just part of etiquette. Okay, so when they welcome you in, they say, have a seat or whatever. If it's a physical interview, you say, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. It's very exciting. I'm looking forward to, getting to know this position and getting to know a bit of what you guys have in mind. So thank you very much. Something like that, right? Just part of etiquette. Learn etiquette. If you don't know etiquette, if you're an introvert, you're a technical introvert, learn the basics of etiquette, which is basically manners, right? It's like an evolution of manners. And the whole purpose of manners is to make people feel good, right? So that people don't get offended and they don't get upset. You want people to feel good about meeting you, and you don't want something you say to be misconstrued and then they get all insulted, right? That's the purpose of manners, and that's the purpose of etiquette. It's just all the same thing. The result is for them to like you. It's for them to enjoy dealing with you. And when you're done, they're glad that they met you and they had that exchange with you. They don't think, oh, Christ, I'm glad that that's over, right? They don't go away thinking like that after meeting you for the first time. They think, wow, that person was awesome. I'd like to talk to them again. It was easy. It was fun. We clicked. I could interact with that person more. And that's actually the most important thing in a job interview, that they go away thinking that. If they go away thinking like, oh, I hate that person, I don't want to ever see them again, do you think they're going to pick you to work with them? Probably not. So no matter how qualified you are, no matter how much technical skills you have, if they walk away from the interview feeling like that, it's not going to go well. So that's very important to understand. Okay. Now, this is the most general question they could possibly ask, right? They say, tell me about yourself. How would you give a wrong answer? Like, what would a wrong answer look like? It's pretty hard to get a wrong answer. Maybe if you said something that had nothing to do with you, they said, tell me about yourself. And you say, oh, okay, great. Okay. So Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart had perfect pitch. It's like, I guess that would be a wrong answer because it's not about you. But anything you could say that's somewhat related to you would technically be an answer to this question, right? That's why I think people are worried about this question, because presumably, it's not quite that open-ended. They're looking for something, but we don't know what it is, right? Okay, you're absolutely right. They are looking for a specific thing. We understand what that is by the context clues. They're asking you this in a job interview. If they were to ask you this when you were not on a job interview, you were with your friends, you're out partying, and somebody of the opposite gender or maybe the same gender says this to you, in the hope of some kind of close personal romantic encounter, obviously you're going to give a different answer, right? It's based on the context. When they say, when you're out in the romantic thing, are you going to run down your resume? No, of course not, right? Right? You're going to talk about how absolutely awesome you are and how everybody likes you and how you're the most attractive person to ever walk the earth. That's what you're going to say. Now, if you say that in the job interview, obviously it's bad, right? So it's the context we're talking about. Okay, they can also use different words to ask this question. They can say, walk me through your resume. They can say, I wrote down some examples here. How would you describe yourself? Please introduce yourself. What brings you here? right? What makes you tick? That's not exactly a popular one, but it's still a version of it. They can even say, tell me something that's not on your resume, right? What's the answer to that? It's usually to give them something from your resume. Because number one, everything relevant about you really, most of it is on your resume. And number two, 99% of the time, these people asking that question, they don't know what's on your resume. They might have looked at it 3 weeks ago and they haven't looked at it since. What would they know about what's on your resume and what's not on your resume? They're just trying to get something out of you. Okay? So they can ask this question in all these different forms. It's the same question. It's an open-ended question about you. Usually it's used as the icebreaker. It's the first question they ask in the job interview. And it's supposed to, in theory, get a free-flowing conversation going and be an introduction to frame everything. Usually it's not, because most recruiters are so bad at having conversations with people that they wouldn't know how to start a conversation. So they think by asking the most cliched thing ever written that it would start a free-flowing conversation. They're wrong. But that's what they're going for anyway. Okay. So how do we answer this question? Well, we give them what they're looking for. What are they looking for? Well, here's the fun part. What they're looking for changes based on who you're talking to. If you're talking to a hiring manager will be your boss if you get the job. So you could talk all about the job. You could talk about the technicalities of how you do it. Maybe you've been doing it for a few years, so you could talk shop with them, right? And they'll get into it. They'll like that. They want to have some conversations about the subject matter of the job. And they love that, right? The problem is, if you're talking to a recruiter is completely different. They work in the HR department. They don't know anything about the job that they're hiring for. So if you start talking shop to them about the technicalities of how you do the job, like if it's a technician job and you start talking to them all about electronics and equipment, they won't understand any of that. So that's not giving them what they want. What they do understand are, communication skills and ambitions and things like that, right? They work in the HR department. So you have to give them what they want. Okay, now, the problem is you don't know who these people are half the time. Is this a recruiter? Is this a hiring manager? You don't even know half the time. And you don't really know what's going on inside their head. So we've got to fall back on like a default thing that will work no matter who we're talking to. And that's where we come to some possible answers here. Finally. Okay? The most basic answer you could give to this question is going down the job requirements. So if they posted a job and they said, we're looking for someone who's got a degree in crazy math and they have 5 years experience doing crazy math in a university, and they have skills in writing reports so they can write up all kinds of fancy reports on crazy math. Okay, that's what the job posting says. That's what you're here to interview for. So you get to the interview, they say, tell me about yourself. And you say, certainly. And then you talk about how you have a degree in crazy math and how you've got 6 years experience working in an academic environment where you're teaching and discussing crazy math, and how you have several publications where you've written reports on subjects related to crazy math, right? So you're basically mirroring the job requirements, okay? You should be doing this in a job interview anyway, regardless of what the question they ask you. You want them to know that you've got a degree in crazy math, you have experience in crazy math, and you have skills in crazy math, right? So that's what you're trying to convey over the course of the interview. So you can start right here in the first question. Tell me about yourself. And chances are they will not react and say, well, that's not what we were wanting to know. It's like, okay, well, I told you something about myself. It's totally relevant to the job, and it's what you said you're looking for. So I think we should start off with that. So that's a passable answer, but that's not the answer that I would recommend. The answer I'd recommend is a little bit more sophisticated. I've done a video on this. It's the most popular video on my channel. It's in 3 parts. The first thing you say is this line, okay? You say, well, as you can see from my resume. Now that line is optional. It's more of a memory jog for you about what you're going to do next, but you can say that, okay? As you can see from my resume. Then you go down your resume and in 45 seconds you give a high-level summary of it. I've got a degree in this, I've got some experience doing this, and I've got skills in this area. You know, I got my degree first, then I did. Now you do it in I guess it's chronological order. Is it chronological order where you start with the oldest and then you come up to the newest? I first got a degree in crazy math, then I took this job in crazy math, then I worked there for 2 years and I came over here, and my most recent job was working in this role at this place, doing crazy math, teaching it, and writing papers on it. Okay? You're coming from the past all the way up to the present. You do this in 45 seconds, and then you end with the line. This is the third part. And that's what brings me here today, and why I'm excited to learn more about this opportunity. There's a bit to unpack here. The problem with a question like "tell me about yourself" is that it tempts people to go off script, to say things that weren't in your job application and that weren't in your resume. Now, how do you know that they respond favorably to those things? Let's say you're talking to somebody who absolutely hates sports. Okay, they love music and movies, but they hate sports. They think anyone who does sports is like a idiot, jock, moron kind of thing. That's their opinion. Okay? They're right, by the way. I'm just kidding. And that's their opinion. Now, you talk to them and you happen to volunteer. They say, "Tell me about yourself." And you say, "Oh, well, I'm this age, and, one of my hobbies is I like to play hockey or football or whatever you play, lacrosse, water polo, Mexican lawnmower jumping, whatever it is that really, really gets you off, from a sort of competitive point of view." And unbeknownst to you, you just struck out. They heard that and they go, "No, this is not going to work. I don't want to work with some jock. I hate people that like sports. Mexican lawnmower jumping? Are you kidding me? I mean, is that the thing where you wear the hockey goalie pads and you jump over the inverted lawnmowers? No, that's not going to fly here. We're a little bit more professional than that. So I'm sorry, you're not a good fit." Right? So that you went off script and you just eliminated yourself, unbeknownst to you, in the first minute. Okay? So the advantage of going down your resume is that the material on it is safe. You sent it in, they read it. Based on reading what you sent in, they gave you an interview. They didn't eliminate you. So obviously, if they read your resume, nothing on there eliminated you. So if you go to that material, you're not going to eliminate yourself. Right? That's the idea. It's safe material to use. So that's why I recommend you answer this question by summarizing your resume. There are some recruiters out there that they don't like that answer because they know that we're onto them. This is the thing. And they have all kinds of retarded answers to this where they say, "Well, if I wanted to know what was on your resume, I'd ask you about your resume." It's like, yeah, but you didn't, did you? You asked the most general question imaginable. And only a fool asks the general question expecting a very specific answer and is going to rake you over the coals if you didn't give that specific answer. I've seen a lot of people do this. It's like they failed conversational skills or interviewing skills 101. If you want to know about their ambition, don't say, "Tell me about yourself." Say, "What are your ambitions?" It's pretty simple, right? So the thing is, they can't eliminate you if you just explain your resume. The other reason why you only want to do this in 45 seconds is because you don't want to take up the whole interview just summarizing your resume and talking about what you did at some other job 5 years ago that has nothing to do with this job you're here to interview for, right? You want to spend your interview time, your talk time, of which you only might have 5 minutes or something in total. You want to spend it explaining why you have everything they're looking for and you're the best candidate. That's what you want to spend it on. Not talking about something you did for somebody else years ago that's irrelevant, right? So we want to summarize our resume quickly, give a polite professional answer, and then get the hell off this question so we can start talking more specifically about how we have what they want. And that's going to come in the next questions. Does that make sense? So just to recap, the best answer that I would recommend is you start by saying the line, well, as you can see from my resume, this line is optional because you depending on how you say that, it can come across condescending. So you could just eliminate it. But then part 2 of 3 is you summarize your resume in 45 seconds, just give a high-level summary, starting with your education and then your experience in chronological order, where you start with your oldest stuff and then you come up to the latest stuff, and then you end with, and that's what brings me here today and why I'm excited to learn more about this opportunity. That's the line you say at the end. Because you want to steer the conversation to talk about this job, not let's dwell on something you did years ago that's irrelevant. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. There's a couple of things I do want to say here about this. If you're coming straight out of school and your concern is that you don't have a lot of career experience, or any, you might not have had a career job before, okay? I want to say that you do have more experience than you think, okay? A lot of the things you did in school, being highly trainable, meeting deadlines, having a good work ethic, asking for clarification when you need clarification, doing extra work as required to meet deadlines, having to meet a certain quality standard, having to pass exams, all this kind of stuff, having to work in groups, having to do presentations, having to collaborate with people and deal with conflicts between members in a group. These are all skills that are required for a job. They're the main skills that are required for a job. It's what a recruiter wants to hear from you about how you can do. Okay, so you can tap all of that experience that you had in school to answer these questions. So when you do your homework for what to say in a job interview, remember, use all of that experience. Think up specific cases and examples to illustrate all of those. Okay, so don't just say, oh, I don't have any experience. You have a lot more experience than you think. And finally, one last point, never say anything negative about you, about anyone else, about anything in a job interview. Even when they try and bait you to do this. When they say, like, tell me about, the worst boss you ever had. What did you hate most about your worst boss or your last boss? Like, even when they bait you, you always answer like, well, actually, there's really not much there that I hate. I don't recall hating anything that they did. We actually got along pretty well. And, sometimes there's conflicts that inevitably happen. There's miscommunications, but through good communication skills, you resolve those and then you make it work and it moves forward. So I never really had any issues. Something like that. You never get baited into saying anything negative about yourself or anyone else because you're making a first impression. They don't know you. And the first words out of your mouth are, I really don't have any experience with this. That's who you are to them. You're a non-starter. Okay? So that's basically what I have to say about the best answer to the question, tell me about yourself. Now we're going to open up to questions. We'll get back in the chat. So if you have any questions about that, get in the chat. Very unrepetitive way of saying it. Fade 10 or Fade 110 says, hey, Bill, it is nice to catch you live. This is maybe a little off topic, but the hidden market strategy, hidden job market strategy also works for business. Just wanted to say thank you for that. Yes. Oh, of course. Yeah. People are people. You don't need anyone's permission to talk to someone, Like, I don't know, maybe in a couple of countries around the world, conceivably you might, but certainly in the West, you don't need anyone's permission to talk to someone. Now, whether they want to talk to return that, to reciprocate, is up to them. But you can talk to anyone you want. Usually the people who have the power to hire you or to influence your hiring, they're higher up. If you're like at the worker level and you're trying to get a job and you're trying to, tap like the hidden job market through networking, you're going to be contacting people higher up, right? They're the ones that have the power to hire you or to create jobs or to decide like, okay, we're going to hire this person over this person. They're higher up, right? So that's what it involves. Some people, they want to do networking, but they don't want to talk to anyone that's above their level. They feel that they don't have the right to do it, which is wrong. But also, more importantly, a lot of people feel like they don't know how to do it, right? Especially people that never worked in sales, because this is what this process is. It's a sales process. You're selling yourself. You're saying, I want you to forget all the other candidates and hire me, right? I want you to believe that you should forget all of them and see how awesome I am and want to hire me. You pick me, right? That's what you're trying to do. That's the sales process. As disgusting and repugnant as that is for some people, I get it. I totally get it. But that's what this is. So you learn the basics of this, and they're really not that hard, and you can do it. It's as simple as talking about what you have, what you know, and what you've done. Presumably you can do that, right? So that's what you do. And then being terribly polite and remembering that the big thing you want is you want the other person that you're speaking to get good vibes talking to you, right? So you're friendly, you say positive things, that kind of thing. Now, if that sounds too hard for you to do, you might have some personal development type stuff to do, but for most people, that's really not a tall order. It just, a lot of people don't realize that's what they need to do. Okay, yeah, definitely. Amaze says, I submitted a wrong resume. What's a wrong resume? For a job without the hiring manager catching it. I was honest enough to call their attention to this mistake and sent an updated resume. I was ghosted afterwards. Listen, this is going to sound very harsh, but these people are dealing with like a lot of people, a lot of candidates. And if the very first interaction you have with somebody, they goofed something up, they're apologizing for not doing something correctly, they're not understanding something, or if there's some kind of problem, that doesn't bode well. Right? Now listen, we're all human, we all make mistakes. The problem is that in this process, a mistake, when it's the only thing that you've ever done to interact with them, that colors, like that's their first impression. You're the guy who, the first time we dealt with you, you messed up. Does that bode well? No, it doesn't. Unfortunately, like we all mess up from time to time. That's just a fact of life. Nobody is 100% perfect, but that's how it appears on the other end. Okay. They don't know that you're awesome. They don't know who you are. They just know that you're the person that the first thing they did it wrong. So, their job is they're starting with hundreds of candidates, and they've got to whittle it down to one. So they're looking for any reason to eliminate everybody so they can pare it down to like a manageable, final three or something that they look at deeply or deeper and then make a more intelligent decision. So until that final three, they're looking for almost any excuse to eliminate somebody. I mean, you see evidence of that when they give you these skill testing questions about like how much salary you want. And then if you want over a certain amount, like a hurdle, they eliminate you. It's like they could be eliminating the best candidate they'd ever seen in their lives. But they don't care about that. They're just looking for any excuse to eliminate somebody. I'm going to try and adjust my camera here. There we go. I'm sure that made a whole world of difference. Just is a little bit bright. makes me appear like an angel, and that's not good. Really, really overweight angel. That's the best kind. When those appear to you, you know you're onto a good thing. Let's see here. Flank Sinatra says, is it possible to find the salary at the beginning? I have to get through 3+ interviews to find that. No, it isn't. You will never know what they could have paid you. You know, and even with a lot of these modern laws that we're starting to see in certain places where they have to post the salary, I bet you money, those are bogus. It's hard to prove in a court of law how high you could have gone, you know, to get the candidate you wanted, or how low you'd be willing to go if you really felt these people weren't that great. You know, how do you know? You only know what's documented, and what they document might not be the reality of what they would be prepared to do. You see? Very slippery, right? So you will never know, okay? And your job is to shut down any conversations about salary and compensation until you get to the offer stage. Okay? This is the clearest example of where the recruiter or hiring manager is your adversary. They are not your friend. You are not partners. You are opponents. They want to pay you as little as they possibly can. You want to get out of them as much as you possibly can, right? Completely conflicting goals. So they're going to use every trick in the book to outmaneuver you and to pull the wool over your eyes and give you a false impression so that you will disclose things, right? Don't ever give a number, and don't have any serious conversations about salary until you get to the offer stage. If you never get to the offer stage, what does it matter? You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. So don't sweat it, okay? Don't take the attitude that, oh, this is a waste of my time. You know, like, listen, this is the sales process. The reality is, like, think of those poor bastards that have to go door to door. You know, like those like salespeople that go door to door, as probably the most obvious example that I'm sure everyone is familiar with. They may knock on 100 doors, right? And the vast majority of people would say no. Sometimes they'll get a very rude no, right? But a certain percentage will say yes, and they'll buy. Even if it's like 5%, okay? If it's like 5%, 5 doors out of every 100 doors that you knock on say yes, I will buy that. That's all you need, right? So 5% would be like a good performance for them, right? You know, so the thing is, if you want to make like 5 sales, you know what you got to do. You got to knock on 100 doors. You see how predictable that is, right? You want to make 10 sales? You know what you got to do. Knock on 200 doors. Can you knock on 200 doors? Sure you can. Might take you a couple hours or whatever, but there you go. There's your 10 sales. Isn't that great how predictable that is? You know what I mean? So it's a similar thing here. This is the sales process. You have no idea what's up with these people. They could be awesome professional people, or they could be a bunch of jackasses doing unscrupulous things. You have no idea. You just go down and do your best, and if they call you back, great. If they don't, oh well, you move on. You don't think about it after the interview's done. That's just your job as a job seeker. You go to interviews. You send in applications, you go to interviews. That's what you do. Or if you're more tuned in, you do networking, and then you go to other types of interviews. So, you know what I mean? So don't be thinking like, well, if I'm here, I have to justify this. It's like, no. 95% possibly of your activity is not going to be directly justified, but it serves to get the 5% that they offer you a job, right? Or whatever proportion it is. Goomy Worms, okay, says, like plural, okay, says, would you say an initial screening from a recruiter at the company is more about personality fit, and any advice for answering questions from them after telling me about yourself? No, I'd say the opposite. I'd say the initial screening is based on sort of more hard facts, like what's your salary, requirement, and do you have the basic qualifications? That's the initial screening, usually, because that's the stuff they can tell on paper, right? In order to figure out your personality, they have to talk to you. And that's where it's more involved. So they do that later. That's when you bring someone in for a job interview. The whole point of a job interview is to assess who you are as a person. Is that the type of person that we would want to work with? Right? That's the whole point of a job interview. And everyone they bring for a job interview on paper is qualified to do the job. I have a video coming out soon that talks about that. Right? Like, what's the point of bringing someone down to an interview who on paper doesn't have the basic requirements to do the job? Like, that makes no sense. If you love this person and you want to work with them, you still can't hire them because they can't do the job, right? If the job requires a medical degree and they don't have a medical degree, what's the point of bringing them down, right? So you can't compete on the fact that you're qualified, despite the impression that these people give you, because every candidate is qualified. You have to compete in other ways, and that reveals the whole point of a job interview. It's to see who you are. What are your communication skills? What do you like as a person? You know, do you understand how to collaborate with other people? Are you someone with a lightning quick temper that, you know, you can't work with because you make everything feel awkward? Or are you like a pleasure to deal with, and, you know, you take every problem in your stride and you can resolve everything without breaking a sweat? You know, are you that type of person? That's the kind of person we want. So the personality stuff comes a bit later, usually. My close personal friend, Flank Sinatra, says, how do I deal with interviewers who behave like school teachers and don't let you ask questions? They just read from a script. Yes, that's a common thing where these people have no real idea how to have a conversation with anyone or how to get anyone to reveal anything about themselves. So what they do is they have to read off a script where it's canned questions. In all fairness to some of them, sometimes their organization requires them to do that. They don't choose to do that, but they're made to do that. So in all fairness, there was some like that. But it's annoying because you never really have a chance to speak freely, right? So here's what you do, okay? You have to say the things that you want to convey to them within the framework of answering canned questions, okay? There are two ways to do that. Number one, before the interview, and this is pretty obvious, you decide what you need to communicate to these people. So if they gave you a list of requirements in the job posting, they said, we need someone with this education, these skills, this experience, you know, this many years of experience doing this, you say to yourself, okay, when I go in there, okay, I need to communicate back to them that I have the education, the skills, the experience, the years of experience doing that thing that they asked for specifically, right? So either these things become your answer. That's one option. So when they say, tell me about your strengths, you say, well, you know, my strengths are, first of all, that I have this education. I mean, that's a major strength right there, and being able to do this. Number two, I've got this many years experience doing this. I got these skills, and I got that other bit of experience doing this specific thing. I think I regard those as tremendous strengths, especially when it comes to doing this type of work, right? So there you go. You answered what you wanted to say. You told them in the form of an answer, right? The other way to do it is to answer their question, okay, but then try and strike up a conversation with them. So the obvious way is to give them an answer, and then you tack on a question at the end back to them. You say, is that what you were looking for? Or something like that. And then they say something, and then you say, you know, okay, great, because you see, I have experience in this, and I didn't know if that was something you were looking for. And they say, oh yeah, you know, and then it goes off script, right? So you get them to go off script by giving an answer that then concludes with a question like, is that what you were looking for? And then you can get in what you want to say, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Amaze says, resume tailored for a different company. Oh, I see what you mean. The wrong resume. Okay. EF, being over 66, is starting a sole service business more appropriate to pursue? I do a live stream every Monday called Side Hustle Ideas, where we talk about business and entrepreneurship and that kind of stuff. So attend that, and I'll be happy to get into it with you. Short answer is yes, it can certainly be appropriate depending on the details. Yada Arroyo says, really overweight angel. You just described my life's mission. Love it. Okay, good. Yes. You know, I mean, if you can't be honest with yourself, I mean, who can you be honest with? Frank, my buddy there, Flank Sinatra, sent a super chat. Thank you very much, Flank. That's very gracious of you. Says, have a drink on me. I will. Here's to you. And EF says, okay. And I think that's how we all feel. Okay, we've got to the end of the chat. If you guys have any more questions, let me know. Get in the chat, or you're struggling with something, let me know. We've covered so far, we talked at the beginning of this live stream, we talked about fake jobs, why they exist, what are they, what to do about them, how to spot them. Then we moved on. I gave you my recommended answer for how to answer, tell me about yourself. We talked about what they're really asking in that question. We talked about different forms that they could ask that question, you know, different words they use that basically mean the same thing. I gave you a sort of basic answer, and then I gave you the more sophisticated answer that I would recommend. You know, it's really not the hardest job interview question. It's one of the easiest, actually. But for whatever reason, people search for that topic more than any other topic in the whole like job search thing. For whatever reason, I guess it's the most confusing question or something, even though it's not the most dangerous and it's not the hardest. Something like, you know, what is your greatest weakness? Like, I think that's a lot more dangerous. You really have to know how to tiptoe around that question, because they're basically saying like, look, you know, we're looking for any excuse to eliminate candidates. And if we were going to eliminate you, why would we eliminate you? Give me a good reason why we would eliminate you. Go. That's what they're basically saying. So to give them an answer, but yet not eliminate yourself, is a little more challenging. So those types of questions are more tricky. Same with, you know, what are your salary expectations? That can be very tricky if you don't know what you're doing. Bottom line is never, ever give a number. Okay. What I recommend is you give a wide range, right? You know, very low to very high. But the two limits, like the low number and the high number, those aren't ridiculous. They're still within the realm of possibility, but you know, they're a stretch, right? And then you say anything in there that's fine with me, you know, that kind of thing. At a low level, if you're going for an entry-level job, or, you know, even like at that sort of worker level, if you start talking about market price and crap like that, I suppose that could work at that level. When you get a bit higher, you can't talk about market price. That's not an answer. You know, it just doesn't work for a variety of reasons. You have to have a more sophisticated answer for that. You know, but those are, I think, those are probably the toughest questions: the salary question and the weakness question. And then a lot of what we see are behavioral questions. You know, this is what recruiters are doing nowadays. They seem to be relying more on behavioral questions. I was speaking to a recruiter Monday, on a live stream on this channel. Another YouTuber who's an ex-recruiter that was talking about that. And he was saying that, you know, I was asking him about like trends, you know, how are job interviews evolving or changing as we go into the future. And he was saying, well, people are asking more behavioral questions. They're really relying on behavioral questions. That's where they ask you a question where you have to answer with a personal story. They say, tell me about a time you did this. How did that go? Tell me about a time you had to resolve a conflict, or you had to meet a deadline, or you failed and you had to sort of justify it. Tell me about a time that happened. Those are behavioral questions. And I can see that. It's a broad trend that's been going on for a long time, since about, I think, the 80s. People have been asking those questions more and more. So you pass those by doing your homework, by preparing. Prepare 10 stories. Successes, failures. Have like a communication thing in there, have like a creativity thing in there, like different topics. Practice saying them in like that compact format, like the STAR format or whatever other format you want. But practice doing this so that whenever they ask you a behavioral question, there's like a million possible behavioral questions. You can't memorize a solution to all of them. So whenever they ask you a question, you're going to select one of those 10 and pull out the one that it's closest to, and then tell that story. You might have to tweak it a little based on exactly what they asked you, but basically that's how you answer. That way you'll always have an answer on the forefront of your mind. It's always ready to go. And you say it in the right format. It doesn't ramble. It gets straight to the point, gives them what they want, and then you look like a hero. That's how you answer those. EF, yeah, you're the one asking about a business. Yes. That's actually my core competency. I'm a business consultant. I talk more about how to grow businesses. That's what I do for my day job. The YouTube thing, I talk about getting hired because that's where there's a lot of demand. People want to know about that rather than how to grow a company. So I talk about this stuff more on my YouTube channel. Fade 110 says, don't let the chat die. You said that I should be overly polite while networking on LinkedIn. Why? No, I didn't mention networking on LinkedIn. I basically say, hi, I provide these services. Feel free to reach out. Best regards. Is that too bold? No, listen, if you literally said that, there's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't sound very warm. It sounds like a salesperson saying, hey, buy my stuff. It does this. Goodbye. Doesn't sound very personable. So you would elaborate a little bit. You would be a little bit more personable. What I've mentioned in the past is I've mentioned the easiest possible way to network on LinkedIn, where you send a message to hiring managers and just managers in general. What I recommend actually are higher level managers, not mid-level managers. Mid-level managers are usually too busy to deal with the public, and it's not part of their job to deal with the public. Like, they're running a department full of people. It's not part of their job to get unsolicited questions from the public. So they will not know what to do with that. So sometimes they completely ignore it. Sometimes they get upset. They're like, who are you? Why are you contacting me? Why do you want to know this? What? No, we don't do that. Just like not knowing, right? It's executive managers, the people in charge. They're the ones that it's part of their job to deal with the public, right? Because somebody contacts you saying, I'd like to know more about this, or I'd like to potentially examine the possibility of working together with you. That could be a really valuable partnership for your company, right? That's the initial reach out for it, right? You don't know. But if you had this attitude of what? No, who are you? How did you get this, this number or whatever, go away, right? You just lost out. This unbeknownst to you, that was someone that was putting the feeler out for an industrial partnership. And based on your highly unprofessional reaction, they said, okay, I'm going to talk to your competitor instead. And the competitor welcomed them in with open arms and said, sure, come on down. Let's have a chat. And next thing you know, they're doing a multi-million-dollar deal with them and not with you. So executives, it's their job, part of their job, to entertain unsolicited queries from the public like that. They don't know, but they investigate. Now, if you've phrased a request very professionally and it seems like it's legitimate, and it seems like it's something that could turn into something, we don't know. A lot of times executives will look into it, right? But the question is, you have to follow a protocol to make a professional request or a professional message, right? They don't want to be sold to by a salesperson, and they don't want to be, they don't want to deal with like a total amateur that doesn't know what they're doing, right? So all you need to do is write a professional message. So you can do that. That's the most basic form I know of like doing networking over with things like LinkedIn, right? There's a lot of principles at play. That's why I put all this into a course. Check out my course if you're interested in learning about that stuff. There's a link in the description, okay? It's hard to just explain it all because it's so much. It's not like job interview questions. I can't make 5-minute snippets of knowledge that make sense when it comes to this stuff. It's all principles that stack on top of each other, and what's really going on the other side and what's going through their head, and how this stuff works. But the simplest thing is just to send out that template message that says something like, hello, I have these skills, I solve this problem. If ever you're looking for someone who can solve that problem for you, please let me know. I know that you guys do this type of work. I'm very excited about working for you. So if ever you're looking for someone, please let me know. Thank you, and have yourself a great day. It's just a blanket message that goes out. And it's like the door-to-door thing. Most people will not be looking right now for that, right? But maybe 5% or 2% or even 1% will. So you want an opportunity to surface. If it's 1%, you send 100 of those out to relevant people. And then one person, they are actually looking for someone with your skills right now. And they were thinking like, oh God, I got to like do the whole job search thing. I got to like write a job description. I got to figure out what the requirements are. I got to contact a recruiter, whether internal or external. I got to set all this up. I got to pay for all this. Then I got to start making time to go to rounds of job interviews, which I don't have time for. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to do that. So if you land right in their lap and you say, hey, I got these skills, I'd love to work for you. That's a perfect fit. The other thing is that you're signaling that you're demonstrating that you have the initiative and the professionalism to reach out to them of your own accord. That signals how passionate you are about working for them specifically. You're also giving them a free sample of your communication skills and how effective you are at being professional, how effective you are at persuading them of something. You're not talking about how you have these skills. You're demonstrating. They're getting a free sample. So as they interact with you, they're getting a free sample of what it would be like to work with you, right? Now that's already more than they can get out of any person who submits a job application, right? You don't have a free sample of what it's like to work for them, okay? As far as you're concerned, they're in it for the money. You put up a job ad, it pays this, people apply. A lot of people apply to those things that don't care about the job, don't know the job, aren't qualified for the job. They just want the money, right? That's why recruiters tend to not trust candidates, because that's the situation you're walking into. This is far more positive. You didn't have to contact them. You chose to contact them. And if they choose to initiate a conversation with you, invite you down to have to talk about it, they're inviting you in. It's not like you're forcing your way in or you're trying to get something. You know what I mean? It's like a totally different dynamic. It feels like a referral. Okay, EF, yes. Fade says, of course, I have a longer message, but YouTube only allows... Okay, it only allows 150 characters? Okay. I guess that makes sense. Sometimes in the comments for my videos, I get people writing pages and pages, like in one comment. These like stream of consciousness kind of things on their philosophy and, So I haven't seen that here, so I guess that makes sense. 150 character limit. Yeah. if you're interested in that, I would say get my course. Start off with that and then start learning, your own stuff. Obviously, I'm going to say that, yes, I have a conflict of interest, but it's up to you. You make up your own mind. I'm not putting pressure on anyone. Yeah. Anyway, okay, it's been an hour and 20 minutes. If anyone has any questions for me, get in the chat. If I don't get much in there, I'm going to wind this down, I guess. Rubcop. I thought that said Robocop for a second, but nope, it's Rubcop. As an end of 50s guy, how can you put your age in a positive light when talking about your long work experience in this day and age where it is difficult to find work for older people? I generally tend to steer clear of the ageism question because it's very politically charged. Ageism works both ways, You don't see a lot of 21-year-olds working as CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. So by the logic of that we apparently use today, you need to equalize that, right? I guess. In the same way, you don't see many 50-year-olds working in entry-level jobs. Doesn't mean you don't see them, but you don't see them as much. I honestly don't know. The thing about older people is that you get more experience, right? Now, here's the contradiction. I mean, what's the universal metric that recruiters care about? They care about years of experience. That's what they seem to reduce everything to. Because they don't understand the nature of the jobs that they're hiring for, so they just reduce everything to years of experience. Now, by that token, older people would have an advantage, right? The only disadvantage I know of, okay, and I don't live in the United States, so I don't know. You guys have a very interesting medical system down there. So I know that people have to buy private health insurance and stuff. And, health insurance costs, like companies pay for their own health insurance. So that changes things. I don't live in that country. I don't understand that system. But what I have dealt with is possibly like an slightly unfair kind of system where if you have like technicians, you have like welders or something where they're older and they have been welding their entire lives and they've been welding for 30 years or something. And certain types of welding, it requires you to like hold your hand up like this and the other hand here. And, you do this for like hours every day, week after week, year after year. And so when you get to like age 60 or something, you can develop musculoskeletal injuries and stuff and things like this that like, I just threw my back out or my arm out or I have to go on disability, right? And the problem is some companies, they don't want to be left holding the bag because we just hired a welder who's older. They're like 60 years old. They've been welding for 30 years and they did all that welding for other companies. We hire them in 6 months. Within 6 months of them starting to work for us, they're off on disability because of a musculoskeletal injury, right? MSI. So that means we got to like deal with their compensation and their disability and all this kind of stuff. Now in the States, my understanding is that stuff is more expensive, much more expensive because the companies have to pay for the medical insurance. Whereas where I am in Canada, you don't. It's all just provided. It doesn't matter who you are or whether you're working or not. Everything's covered. So, that makes companies down there in the States less inclined to hire older people because like it might be potentially more expensive for them if they have health issues. So I know that plays a factor in this discussion. In terms of ageism, I don't know. I mean, I think that it's hard for a 50-year-old to discriminate against a candidate who's a 50-year-old, I think it's hard for a 21-year-old to discriminate against somebody because they're 21 years old, So what I'd recommend is that if you're 50 years old or something and you're interviewing with people that are 21, that's where you might see these kinds of issues. If you interview with people who are 50 themselves, hopefully the fact that you're 50 will not enter into it, because they see the value of being 50 because they're 50. You know what I mean? Whereas a 21-year-old won't see the value of being 50 or vice versa, So beyond that, I don't really have much to say about it. I don't know what the answer is. I think that you need to go for jobs where they hire older people, where you, like, the experience that you have will be an advantage, but yet the liability that you may have in terms of, like, I don't know, physical ailments or something will be less of a liability. Like if you wanted to teach welding or something, you don't have to weld yourself. You just talk about it, less chance of getting an injury, I don't know. That's pretty much what I have to say about it. I'm really not an expert on those kinds of politically charged kind of things, but hopefully that makes some sense. I don't know how to say your name, but you say the problem for me is to get past the ATS. I changed my resume a lot, but I still have 99% rejection rate. You're not alone. So many people apply for the posted jobs that they get hundreds of candidates applying for each one. Therefore, they reject the vast majority. Look, if you're trying to play that game, it's all about customizing your resume. It's all about keyword matching, and it's all about key phrase matching. And in my opinion, it's about not diluting your skills by including a bunch of stuff on your resume that they didn't explicitly ask for. That's just my opinion. I don't have any data on that. What I'd recommend is that people don't play that game, because it's not a very optimistic type game. When you realize that all the jobs you see, all those jobs, that's only 20% of all the jobs that are out there. The other 80 are hidden. They're not posted. And the reason they're not posted is because they don't have to post them, because they're good jobs and they don't have trouble finding qualified people to fill them, right? So if this is a surprise to you, step into that world, learn about the hidden job market. That's where the opportunities really are. In the description box of this video, there's links to a couple of videos I've done in the past. One is called Hidden Job Market. The other one is called How Successful People Get Jobs. Watch those videos to be the beginning of stepping into that world. And you can see what type of activities you can get in there that will lead to discovering and getting those jobs. Whole different ballgame. You're bypassing recruiters for the most part. At least that's the way I recommend it. You're going straight to the people that can hire you, the hiring managers, and people above the hiring managers. So that's what I recommend. I've talked all about that in that course. If you really want to learn that whole thing, I put all my knowledge and recommendations right there. So check it out. There's a link in the description. But don't take my word for any of this. Go and do your own research from a variety of different sources. And the best learning is done through experience, by trying things. And, come to your own conclusion. I know that a lot of people are ideologically opposed. A lot of young people, for some reason, they're ideologically opposed to, like, the idea that the hidden job market exists and that it's not some big conspiracy. As I said, people can hire who they want. They don't have to do everything publicly if they don't want to. If they have a candidate in mind and you're in a private company and, that candidate has reached out to you and, you decide to meet with them and they seem really good, there's nothing that says you can't hire them. It's a free country, whichever country you're living in, hopefully. They can do that, right? In the same way that you don't have to work by law for them, and you can quit if you choose to, right? The same rights apply to employers, right? Like every time someone who has like a family business, like a mom and pop shop, they hire a family member. Do they have to post that publicly? Of course not. They can hire who they want. So you're tapping into that. There's a lot of people that, or have a lot of jobs out there, they don't post publicly. Why would you post it publicly? So you can get 1,000 strangers to apply for it. So you got to sort through 1,000 resumes, and then you don't even know if, like, these people, their resume, is it a complete fabrication? Is it all lies? a lot of the resumes you get, they're all like people that are totally unqualified. They don't have any of the things you said you needed in the job posting, but yet they like sent in their resume anyway. You know what I mean? Like how is that useful for you? Wouldn't it be more useful if someone you worked with for the last 10 years said, and that you trust, said, hey, I know someone who might be good for this. You know, you should maybe talk to them, bring them in and give them an interview and see. You don't hire them because of somebody else. You give them a chance because of somebody else, right? Now, you can get in on that process by just contacting them and saying, hey, I'm here. I got this. Are you looking for that? You know, like we talked about 10 minutes ago. So that's a whole world. So learn about that world. Supplement your job search campaign with some of this stuff. Okay? The problem is, the catch is that it requires learning about people. It requires learning about etiquette and protocol for how you do this stuff. Okay? Because what a lot of people do is they reach out to some executive and they say, hey, give me a job. You know, like the answer is no, I'm not going to respond to that. You seem rude. You seem like you don't understand how to talk to people. You know, you're trying to get something out of me without like giving anything. Like, why would I do this? I don't need to give you a job. There's the whole organization that can find people to give them a job. Why would what's the incentive for me to like consider you? You know what I mean? So you gotta learn about this. Anyway, I'll just leave it at that. Amaze says, can recruiters send mass unsolicited job ads to people on LinkedIn? I sometimes get messages with my name on them and get ghosted when I respond. Now, when you say people, you're talking about candidates? Can recruiters send mass unsolicited job ads? Yeah, they can do. LinkedIn is like the Facebook of business. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of dumb people on there that don't know what they're doing, and they're employing like scam tactics, like mass emails, spam emails, you know, things that don't really fit the person that it's going to. But they figure like, okay, I'll just pepper the world with this stuff and then maybe like one or two people will bite, you know. That's my impression. I mean, I got a LinkedIn account. I've been on there for years and, you know, I get all kinds of spam and crap that they just send you. So it takes all kinds. You get a lot of very unsophisticated people trying to do very silly things on there too. So, and then you get a lot of, you know, legitimate people that are doing legitimate things on there. So it all comes together. But can they do it? Yes, they can. And I don't know the ins and outs of this, but I know that there's like those premium accounts that you can pay for. I had one like 10 years ago or something. I had a premium account. I had it for a while, and then I like a year or something, and then I canceled it, and I've not had one ever since. They give you certain things. You know, the one killer feature for me, as I've said before, was they allow you to do people searches. So, you know, you search for something and then you get people that have that. But normally the people that show up in the search results, they have to be in your network. They have to be like first, second, or third degree connections. If you get a premium account or a certain premium account, I know that like then you can get results of people that are not in your network. So that's what I used it for way back in the day. That was pretty much the only reason I paid for the premium account for what I was wanting to do. You know, but I think that if you pay for the premium, then you can like mass email everyone in the world and all this kind of crap. You know, like, you know, it doesn't work, but you know, some people try it. Amaze says, yes, mass messages to LinkedIn users, prospective candidates. It's just annoying when you respond and they go, yeah, it's like, what's the point? You know? Or it feels like you're being played, I imagine, because like they're trying to get a very specific thing, but they're like just peppering like everyone with this. And so maybe a lot of people might respond, but they only value like a couple of responses from very specific people. It's like not the best way of going about things. Anyway, I think that's probably good for today. We've been like at an hour and a half. There are 47 people here. Thank you for joining me today. You guys are awesome. I wish you every bit the best of luck in your job search campaign. Just remember, it's a thing where you have to work at it a bit and you learn. And I know it can be very, very stressful. Try not to freak out completely. There's a lot of different things you can do to find jobs. There's many different methods of finding jobs. Some of them are suited to different types of people, like what method you use. If you're an introvert, which I suspect most people are that are on the internet and they're, communicating by chat and text and all that kind of stuff, you are highly valuable. The weak point for a lot of introverts is the social skills and the awareness of how people interact with each other. So if you can take this as an opportunity to learn more about that stuff, that will benefit you, not just in getting a job now, but the whole rest of your career. You'll know more about people, what it will take to persuade them, how you discover and connect with them, all that kind of stuff, how you talk to them in such a way that they think you're awesome. You know what I mean? Like you'll learn about how to do all those different things. So take this as an opportunity, certainly for a lot of you guys, to learn that stuff. And then you walk away, not just with a job at the end of this process, but with a lot of knowledge of things that are going to serve you well throughout the rest of your career. That's what I would say. I will be back actually in like half an hour or something. I've got another live stream on this channel called Honest HR Nitrous, where it's just a Q&A where we talk about the reality of how this stuff plays out in the real world. And and then I'll be back on Friday too with another live stream. So thank you to everybody who is here. You guys are awesome. Thank you to John. John is just chiming up for the first time. So John says, nice job. Thank you. You're welcome, John. And thank you very much. Thank you to Amazed, to Fade 110, to Rubcop, to everybody who participated. My close, intimate friend, Flank Sinatra, him and me are like this. Him/her and me are like this for the super chat. And I will see you guys very soon. Take care.